Yeah, so I would love to kind of start off with a lot of us come from an online business background. A lot of us are very young, as you can see from the beautiful faces in the room. And there is this myth I see in modern entrepreneurship that is number one, you have to do it alone. Number two, business is about getting as much as you can, kind of like a pirate, where you're like, you're in it for yourself. You have to backstab people. You have to, climb the ladder. You have to get ahead of people. And it's very like take, 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 take. And I think when you look at more traditional business, it is not physically possible for you to do that because it's more around in-person community. There's a lot more trust built in. I know your family business started as a corner shop and has grown into the amazing empire that it is. But what would you say to the idea that business is about taking and getting rather than giving?
Well, it's not for me the purpose of business, and I think it's not something I thought about much when I started out in business, but over the years I have been thinking through, well, what really is purpose of business? If you can be clear about the purpose of your business at the very outset, then I think that's the right starting point. So thinking about the Fellowship of the Ring, what was the purpose of their journey, and did they fully appreciate what the purpose was? Probably not. Right. They had one goal. At least Frodo knew what the goal was, and so I think if we start with a servant attitude, then that probably will help us not to get caught up in the attractions that there clearly are if success comes and you want more, because in the middle of all of this there is still sin and the temptation and the power of the ring. It's very easy to...
No, you're so deep in the Lord of the Rings. This is perfect. Wow. I guess he's part of it. This is perfect.
Yeah, one ring to seek them, one ring to find them, one ring to rule them, and in the darkness find them.
You're even a reader?
About 50 years ago. Wow. Not quite. I read the book.
Incredible. And
no,
so I
40 years ago.
I love the point that you made, how just like Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring, he thinks he knows his goal. So his goal is to take the ring to Rivendell. And I think a lot of us, when we start our business, is like, let's just make enough money to survive. Let's pay. That's a
good goal,
and it's a worthy, honorable goal. And then there comes a time in a man's life, in an entrepreneur's life, where they realize that they're being invited into a bigger quest.
Yes,
beyond the honorable task of providing for your wife and providing for your kids and providing a home and being an active member of the community. Mm-hmm. So what was your transition, getting into business, and then how did you start to kind of like grapple with this bigger purpose of business beyond provision?
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe take you through some of my faith journey. So I came to know Christ when I was about 7, and I can still remember the moment when I felt compelled to seek forgiveness, and that remains for me a seminal moment, the start of a journey. I would say it was not until I was a Christian at university that it became alive, became real. And I had 3 great years getting involved with Christian Union at Jordanstown, and saw faith in action. And then I had to take a decision in terms of what I was going to do. So I spent some time working for another similar wholesaler in England, and became clear to me that this was, I really loved this industry, and decided to join the family business. And then you get sucked into the family business for a long time, and it becomes, in some ways, it's like a hamster wheel. And get married, kids come along, and I suppose sadly, it's maybe only in the last decade or so that I'm beginning to appreciate a bigger purpose. And so we have connected to the business a Christian charitable trust. And that's something I also got involved in. And that is an opportunity for us to give out of the blessings that we have received. So out of the outflow of our business, we can bless others, and that you begin to realize you're part of something bigger, part of God's kingdom purposes. But I've had to, I guess, to wrestle with what that means. And bit by bit, it's become clearer that the business itself is a witness. And okay, so in some respects, there's not many Christians in I guess positions of influence in the business, but my brother and myself as shareholders are both believers, and so we seek in creating a culture, and the extent that we create the culture, that to be a culture that reflects the kingdom of the heavens and kingdom values. And so the business itself can be a witness and even a ministry. And so coming here today, I think, is part of my role as a Christian entrepreneur to support other Christian entrepreneurs.
So business has this reputation of being cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all sat around a negotiation table, whether it's been online or offline.
Mm.
And the picture of Christianity is, the meek and mild white Jesus with a little lamb in his hand. And we very often forget kind of the sharper, tougher side of Jesus as well.
Mm.
How do you balance that graciousness
mm-hmm.
with a need to do business deals that are fair, particularly in an industry where your profit margins are on the edge of a knife at times?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the guys
mm-hmm.
in the room, they have like 90% profit margins because they don't have any physical components to their business.
I love 90% profit margins. Yeah, and our wholesale business is as tight as 2% net profit. The overall business is a bit more, but it's tight. It's about volume, and you've got to manage your costs carefully, and you've got to get the right margin. And so you've got to negotiate hard. And I believe in the market, not unfettered, but the market as a means of economic production works. So and you have to play by the market rules. So for us, needing volume, we got to be aggressive in terms of sales strategy and marketing. But the purpose is you got to keep the customer in mind. For us, it's the shopper. So what you're trying to do is deliver value for the shopper. So there is a purpose beyond simply getting the best possible price. And whilst we are a business of some scale in Northern Ireland, if you look at the scale and we bring to the negotiation table, most of our suppliers are GB based, or the majority are. We're small. Spar is less than 3% of the UK market. We can't compete on price with Tesco. What we have to fight hard to get what's fair, but we have to offer something in return then for suppliers, which is a route to market, and we've got to do a good job for the suppliers. So for me, it's a bit like a game. Whatever sport you play by the rules, but you play hard. You play to win. And you can do that. I think you can do that still with the generosity of spirit. So if you go back to the economic community that the Lord established with the Israelites back in the wilderness, and then into the promised land, into Canaan, he said, look, you don't glean, you don't harvest right to the edge of your boundaries. You leave something on the margins for those who are coming after, who for whatever reason are in the margins in society, and you leave something for them as well. I think there's good principles here, because ultimately, who owns your business? Who owns our business? It's not our business, it's God's business. We're stewards of that business for a period of time. We'd like to pass it on to the next generation. So and part of establishing relationships is establishing relationships in the community. Not sure if that fully answers your question, but I think you can fight hard for what is just and what is your right, and do things well with integrity. But then in the overflow, be generous.
So very, very practically, like when you come into that negotiation environment, what do you bring to the table? What tools do you bring to the table? What practices do you personally do that would perhaps be different than you without the Lord, you without your faith? You know, so what, like, tangibly, practically about getting a new customer or negotiating or a very difficult business conversation changes because of your faith?
The challenge is, I think, the degree of transparency that you are prepared to show, and I believe in trying to be transparent. But if you're negotiating, and you know, there's standard negotiation, and I don't do a lot of negotiation. My negotiations initially would have been with our union because I came up through the logistics route, so I looked after our warehouse and transport operations for a period of time, and we tried to establish, thinking about relationships, a partnership with our union. And you always have a goal. You know what you're trying to achieve in your negotiations, and you know what your parameters are. You've got your I suppose, you know, your mandate for negotiation, and you got a backstop position. You know what you'd like to achieve. You don't reveal your hand at the very outset, and so in one sense you're not fully transparent, but you've got to at all times seek to be truthful as well in what you do. So, you know, if we're facing a challenging year, we've had a challenging year, say I'm back to my negotiations with people, with the union, then you don't over-egg the pudding, if you know what I mean.
What do you mean by that?
So you don't make things, I don't think you make things worse than they actually are. You try to be as realistic and factual as possible. Guys, here's the situation. You could play a game and try to make people think one thing when it's actually something else. But that's not to say you don't accentuate the positive, if you like, you know, to make your point as well. So this, I think, integrity and truthfulness. But you're remembering you're still playing a game, you know, and there's tactics to it. But at the end of the day, you've got to come out of it and say, was that a fair result for everybody? So we know we're probably not getting the fair result sometime. Well, we believe we're not with the larger suppliers, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't treat the smaller suppliers well. So, you know, in terms of payment terms, for example, and making sure that you're helping a smaller supplier. So we've got, you know, good examples of local artisan producers who we've taken a punt on, given shelf space to, who are now supplying our colleagues, bar colleagues in GB, and you maybe give a little more than you otherwise would want to nurture a relationship to help grow somebody, because there's a long-term reward for both parties. It's a win-win.
Right. And when you were talking about leaving a little bit around the edges of the field, that Old Testament idea, like what I kind of saw as well is like goodwill, the importance of goodwill in your relationships. And, you know, if you maximize every single possible transaction value in every single relationship, you're not going to make very many friends. You know what I mean? You're going to have people in a state of anarchy with you at the very least. And again, in the online space, in like the high ticket closing world, there's a phrase that Michael taught me, wherever Michael is, there he is. It's called burn the lead. And it's basically, it's like you do everything you can to get the sale and you don't hold anything back. And I think that, you know, in an American market and in an online market, that works, quote unquote, because there's so many potential customers that you can have. But you're in a business where you can't afford to burn your bridges, because your bridges are the local community. And if you lose the local community, then you destroy your reputation. And I think on a long enough time horizon, I think like we short sell our long-term reputation as online entrepreneurs. I know not everyone's an online entrepreneur, but speak to me a little bit about the importance of like reputation, the importance of trust, the importance of those longer-term relationships at every stage of your business, team, customers, partners, suppliers.
Yeah, so reputation is everything as far as I'm concerned. Part of that is self-preservation in a way, but it is also witness. So we bear a testimony to the one that we follow, and we are made in his image. and I think we should do business in His image. And the triune God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, who work in relationship to each other. But they works built into us, and so we should reflect that goodness, that rightness of God, but that relationship and the working together. So that's kind of at the heart of it. If we take a shortcut in business, somebody somewhere will see it and know it, and it'll say something about who we are and something about who our reflection of the one that we follow. And that obviously gives a distorted view of who God is. So for me, it's over the years, it's developing it's almost like an ecosystem. So it starts with a growing business, building your team. So the first relationship is with the team, and then with the building a relationship with the customer, and then your supplier, and then, as you say, our customers. The nature of our business is we're supplying lots of independent convenience stores throughout the north of Ireland. They're deeply embedded in communities, and they have relationships, and sometimes they have relationships with a local supplier, and then we get the tension of, well, we've got to deal with a larger supplier we're trying to support, and they're trying to support local suppliers, and you got to come to a happy compromise in the middle of all that. And then we've got a brand, and each of you are in the business itself can be the brand, or you may have a brand. We happen to have a number of brands. We'll pick one, Spar, and that has a worldwide reputation. We need to uphold that reputation as well. It stands for something. So as our business, are we standing for the values that we espouse? Our values are to act with integrity, which is a mnemonic, which is A, it's about ambition, C, it's about the customer, T, it's about team, and then it's with integrity. So we've got to protect all of that. And at any point in time, we'll have, employing a relatively large number of people. Somebody somewhere will probably not be doing quite what they should be doing. And then how you deal with that and sort that out is also important. And our guys we set our guys goals, and sometimes those, in their achievement of those goals, that might conflict with how we want to do business, and we have to be cognizant of that, and you're constantly shaping and reshaping how you do things. But those relationships are really important, because let's start with their team. It's hard to get good people today. It's hard to attract in the first place, because we're nearly at full employment in Northern Ireland. It's hard to keep people. There's particular jobs that are a challenge, be they in store, be it shift, and people having to work more on social hours. So you need to look after people well for the longer term, and we have many people. We've got a guy who will, next year, God willing, will have completed 50 years of service with us, and he's keeping going until he gets to the 50 mark. And that's that relationship is built up over clearly a long period of time, where you get to know someone and if you're not genuinely interested in your team and people, then you're gonna struggle to develop a relationship. And the same with customers. They can we tend to do a 5-year agreement, and after 5 years they're free to go somewhere else, and in the middle of it all they can still purchase from elsewhere. They're not obliged to buy everything from us. We can't in competition terms, so we're constantly still selling and influencing, and that's always done better and when there's a good relationship. Similarly with suppliers, we know that they have goals, and we need to try to help them achieve their goals. And in doing all of that, I would say not so much maximizing, you're optimizing for everything for that ecosystem, or let's call it the value chain. So you're trying to optimize. Well, actually, you're probably if you take a view that the suppliers usually have their hand on the lever, you're always sort of trying to get the best deal from them, but we're trying to optimize the profitability of the stores that we supply, even though it's not our business. That business needs to be sustainable in the long term for long-term profitability. So if they're not profitable, it'll not be sustainable. If they're not profitable, they'll not buy as much from us. If they're not profitable, there'll be no incentive for the next generation, or no incentive for them to take the next step to extend their store or get another store. So we have to, as part of what we're doing, our mission for our wholesale business is to be great partners to great retailers. So that partnership is vital. And then in Spar, you're in a community. It's like a family. There's 5 wholesalers in the UK who are all trying to work together to negotiate with suppliers, to develop an own brand, to market the business. And then you're part of an international fellowship as well, which is more about benchmarking and learning. And on all of that, there's transparency and openness because we're not competitors. We're not direct competitors. We can share with each other. And Spar's been going since 1932, and it was originally set up by a Dutch retailer or wholesaler who could see the rise of the chain stores, the big multiples, as a model, and knew that unless wholesalers and retailers worked together under a common brand to get the best price and to market the brand, they were going to struggle and not survive. So there is always there's always the need to, in terms of sustainability, you're simply trying to survive. One of our wholesalers in the UK, their whole mission statement is to be in business in 50 years' time, which is, you think, what's that about? But you think of all the things that you would have to do to be in business in 50 years' time, and you kind of see where their focus
it's interesting for a lot of our American colleagues in the room. Something that I like kind of shocked me about America. For the most part, America's a very big place, as you know, and lots of difference between from state to state. But I was shocked to see how few local shops there were after growing up here. Mm-hmm. And whenever Americans come to visit Ireland, they're like, your petrol stations or your gas stations.
Gas.
Your gas stations are amazing. Like, you can go in here and get like a Sunday dinner, and like, don't know why they have a Northern Irish accent when they say it. It's like very strange. But I see how like you guys here in the UK and Ireland have kind of like held the line against the superstores, let's just say. And I think like there's something from a community level that is lost when I go to the States, and I see that there isn't. You can't just walk to get milk. For the most part, you can't walk and have a relationship with the cashier. Like our kids, there's a petrol station right beside where we live, and like they are part of that it's part of our daily routine almost, It's mm-hmm. like the community fridge. And I think it's it's interesting when you think about staying in business for 50 years. It's like, the way the world is going. I'm sure there's some sort of Lord of the Rings metaphor here about holding the line, but I'd like to kind of do one more high level theme, and I'd just like to hand it over to you guys. And that theme is around finances.
Mm-hmm.
So this
is not my area of expertise, even though I technically got a degree in accountancy.
Right. But broadly speaking, the church has like a complicated relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll speak for myself, but I was brought up kind of in an environment where like money is evil and
mm-hmm.
ambition is evil, and going after success is wrong, and
mm-hmm.
you should be a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a missionary for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I came back, and I just always in my heart, it's like I knew I was supposed to start a business. And yet the church then also was like, oh, hey, like it's basically sinful if you make money, but
mm-hmm.
could you give us £1 million for our new building? And it's like, well, which way do you want it? And so,
mm-hmm.
For someone in the room who maybe has a strong faith and feels complicated about, would God really want me to be an influence in the marketplace? Would God want me to steward wealth responsibly? How would you kind of handle that objection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not one I ever faced, because the church I grew up in, which was a Brethren assembly, so part of that Brethren movement, there was a long history of, successful businessmen who were both dedicated to their business and to their church fellowship. And so, obviously being a fourth generation family member, you stand on the shoulders of those who's gone before. So never for me, and I never ever saw business as in any shape or form sinful or worldly. But having been involved a little in Kosovo and Eastern Europe, and now involved more in India, these are exactly the objections that young Christian entrepreneurs are finding, that the church doesn't necessarily see business as a valid ministry. And part of that's because, Kosovo in particular, they are emerging from a communist era. There's a lot of corruption, and business was seen to be corrupt, and businesses were corrupt, and there was the local mafia involved as well. So you could understand, in a way, it's like, the whole question of being in the world but not of it. How do you do that well? And whilst I wasn't involved in doing this, the guys I were with who were trying to find a way to promote and support fledgling businesses, they had ended up then starting with the church pastors and getting them all together. There weren't many in Kosovo, but literally getting them all together and bit by bit just working through why they should provide a supportive environment for Christian business. It hasn't proved overly successful in Kosovo. There's lots of challenges in that country. India is entirely different in that where we've been working is with within the local Christian community, which is relatively small when you look at the size of India, but nonetheless there are a lot of Christians on the ground, and I think the church has come to terms quicker with the opportunity, the importance of the validity of marketplace ministry and what that can mean. I mean, it's witness, it's creating employment. I mean, don't ignore the benefits of creating employment. And I guess the virtuous circle is Christians in business, being successful, creating employment, making profit, plowing that profit back into the business, tithing into the local church, which ultimately is helping to make the local church more sustainable. So it's not the purpose of business, but it is a benefit. It's one of the purposes of business, perhaps, is to effectively, in kingdom terms, be supporting the local church. And I mean, there's some excellent projects in places like Africa. There was a guy I was in India 2 weeks ago speaking to a product design engineer who was creating very much micro businesses in tribal areas in northern India where there's a lot of persecution of the local church. So I need a fantastic model going where they were using local products like bamboo and jute, which are really sustainable products, to create packaging, actually to produce some furniture for IKEA, very much with the support of the local church. So not, presuming that not all members of the community were Christians, but some were. So there was a benefit back into the local church and the whole idea of sustainability in the project. So it's a non-argument for me. We are to be salt and light. We were made to work. And I think the Lord encourages entrepreneurial activities. Any number of great examples, from Job to Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. They're all big ranchers, effectively. Boaz, what did Paul do? Paul was a tent maker. To be a tent maker, he needed to be entrepreneurial. Whilst the whole idea of tent making, I guess, is to support your ministry, I'd be very surprised if tent making also wasn't his ministry, because he would have been in the marketplace. He chose to take premises in the public square, so to speak, to debate with others and persuade people of what Christ had done. So it's you just have to have that discussion and face it head on and have a good debate about the benefits, the purpose of business. And I think when you're clear about purpose and pastors get clear about purpose, then I think you can create that kind of virtuous circle or collaborative activity.
All right, lads, over to you. Go ahead, mate.
So I have a question related to what you were mentioning.
Sorry, it's super awkward. I don't have a longer cable. I'll run it actually, just for people at home. Yeah, if you could. Yeah.
So I have a question. There's kind of two stages of entrepreneurship, it seems. And how I was trying to narrow it down is, I think the first stage is becoming like long-term comfortable. So bills are paid, but probably for the next 12 months, 18 months, like becoming very stable. And I think that's kind of taking care of your inner family. And then, as Matthew was mentioning, you move on to the second stage of outside of your family, and you go and probably try to take care of all of humanity a bit, other than just your family. And so in those two phases, I'm curious for the both of you, what fueled you more? Is it fighting evil, or was it pursuing good? When you're trying to become long-term comfortable, and then in your second phase, when you're trying to make an impact on the world. That's my question.
Yeah. Cheers, bro. I feel like for those of you who studied some business theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes in here because needs must, and you got to put food on the table and a roof over your family and clothes on their back. So that's the starting point. In terms of back to relationships again. The fundamental relationship is with God, and view God as a partner in your business. You got to look after your family, so the business has got to be profitable and be able to provide for your family's needs. And when I was starting out, it's not that we was relying on the business to be profitable. I was just trying to manage my household budget on a a lowish salary with a mortgage rates at I think 13% in 1987, something ridiculous like that. So you're getting by, and that somehow takes away from the broader purpose that you speak of. It probably shouldn't be, but it does, because you're very focused on meeting those needs. And then you've got to be able to, in terms of success in the business, and if you're making profits, then you need to be reinvesting those profits back into the business. That's how the business grows. So, what you don't need for yourself, and what you're not giving to the church, then you're investing back into the business. At some point, probably too late in my life, you see that bigger purpose. And what drives me is the broader kingdom purposes, and how we don't know that journey that we're going to take, which we're not taking. I don't know how you read Lord of the Rings, but for me, Frodo the Ring Bearer is what Christ does in destroying evil, and we are following in his wake, if you like. But there's that broader kingdom purpose of witness, spread of the good news, redemption. That for me is the focus, and not fighting evil per se. Evil gets in the way, sin gets in the way, derail, speed bumps in the road derails us, takes us down cul-de-sacs on that journey. But I think for me, that purpose at a point in time is taken over. But if I'm realistic about it, it's because to what extent I don't have to worry so much about those basic needs. It frees up the headspace. Maybe it's just allows us to be less anxious, and we can think about a higher purpose. I don't think it should be that way, but for me, that's the journey I went on anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where Jack went. There he is. I think for me, like, something that was very helpful, it was actually drilled into my head in the castle whenever I was a wee lad, was the proverb, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." So it's like a very lazy business strategy, but I just try to do what God tells me to do. And I know that sounds like quite glib and easy to say, and we could have a whole conversation like, well, how do you figure out that? Which will be like interesting to have. But for me, like, I think in your early 20s, speaking from my own experience, it's very easy to be binary. So it's like black and white. It's like, oh, when I achieve X, then I can do Y. And I think in my experience, real life works a little bit more like this. The evil that you're talking about and the good you want to do, you can always do it at any time. And so for sure, like, you need to pay your rent. You need to make sure your kids have food. You need to provide for your family. That is a form of you like protecting your family from evil. And along the way, like, whenever you're making a small amount of money, it's like, if you're obedient, God can take like the little act of obedience that you do and make a big, massive ripple impact in the epic battle between good and evil. And so I remember interviewing a local comedian on one of my first podcasts, and I was like, oh, mate, I think he was probably making like, I don't know, 50K a month. I was like, whoa, like, what's it like to make like that much money? And he was, honestly, mate, it's just exactly the same as it was making 5K a month. And I was like, that couldn't possibly be true. He says, you're just doing the same gigs. You're doing the same work. It just, the paychecks are bigger. And for me, it's the same with the kingdom impact that I get to make. Is I always was trying to be obedient, and always, like, when God put someone on my heart, I tried to come alongside them. Or if he asked me to give a certain amount of money, even though it was like buttons, which felt like buttons, it was still making an impact. And the only thing that's changed as I've gone on like the bigger journey is that the level of impact has increased. Same with the comedian. And so I think there is something to be said about like just being faithful with the small things that God has put in your hands right now. Like, I'm thinking of like Jan, the German kid that works with you. It's like, if you can be an excellent leader to Jan, it's the same. How many people do you have working in the group?
It's nearly 6,000.
It's actually fundamentally the same energy. It's just bigger impact as God blesses you more and more. And the really interesting thing that Martin said is he said, if you become successful. And I was like, wow, we could get into that. That's a huge topic. But I do think that God calls people to certain levels of success. Like, I'll never start a software company. I'll never be Elon Musk. Like, these are things I know for sure about myself. And I know that God calls certain people to do that. So for me, it's less about like, oh, first I got to do this and then I got to do that. It's like, just focus on what is in front of you and try to be open to what you feel like God is tugging you into. And again, I know you're like super new to the faith, so we can have like a big conversation about like how you could start to practically do that.
But God will do more than you can ever possibly dream or imagine. So
Say it again?
God can do more than you can ever possibly dream or imagine. So
Where's Jed?
in some ways, think big.
Jed, can you read Luke 9:16? Or do you know it off by heart?
Well, I don't know the exact words, but
Give us the spirit of the word.
yeah, so basically about what Jesus takes 5 loaves and 2 fish, he prays that God blesses it, so it goes out and feeds thousands.
Yeah. So in India 2 weeks ago, we were at a conference a bit like this, for
Really?
for Christian entrepreneurs,
Okay.
because they're trying to build networks. There's all sorts of things they're trying to do, but one of the speakers was basically talking about God's a God of multiplication. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean success, but creation's going that way. The new creation, God's kingdom, and when God made man, he gave him a very clear job, to steward his creation. Creation was told to go forth and multiply. So God wants to do these things. There's a verse in Isaiah that talks about extending your tent and extending your boundaries.
Right.
And that's not, if your purpose and your motive is right, God will bless you in ways you couldn't possibly dream or imagine. That might not mean financial success. That could be your influence on people.
Right. And Alexander and I had a mind-bending conversation about the difference between scaling a business and allowing God to multiply a business.
Oh, well, the purpose, the theme of the conference was, how do you scale your business God's way?
Yeah, just like we planned. Perfect. Anyone else? Go ahead, Arden. Get this one.
Short question. You described business as a hamster wheel,
Yes.
and I was wondering what you meant.
So, well, if you know what a hamster wheel looks like, and the poor hamster who gets on the wheel and can't get off it, sometimes you find yourself not just doing the same thing every day, but the same thing every year. So, our business has grown, and it's grown successfully, but incrementally, I would suggest. It hasn't grown in huge leaps and bounds, because it's the nature of the business is people need to eat, and you're meeting people's needs. But it has grown steadily, and you find yourself, at the end of it, the years become shorter, and you find yourself at the end of the year doing your budgeting for next year, looking at your final set of accounts, and here we go again. You're on the hamster wheel. And I think if you don't see a bigger purpose beyond that, then the danger is you get into a routine. If you're fortunate that the business is continuing to grow, you're almost an automatic pilot if you're not careful, and that's when you can become complacent, and actually to change the metaphor, the wheel falls off. But sometimes it just it's work can be a grind. That's the way it is. It's the nature of sadly the result of the fall is work is hard.
By the sweat of your brow. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, wow. We're in dangerous territory here. Like, I'm getting all tangled. Whoa.
So with business partnerships, there's a lot of risk, and it can be challenging to work with someone and to agree on certain values and goals and things of that sort. Do you still suggest that most people enter into business partnerships? And if so, what do you think the biggest benefits are of working with someone in spite of those challenges?
It's a very good question. because, and I was in preparation for that, I was just thinking about the nature of relationships. So I've described some of the natural business relationships with customers and suppliers and team. But you potentially are sharing ownership of a business with somebody else, and so working closely with somebody, goal alignment has to be very important. Now, we've taken the decision as a business over the years not to enter into a joint venture with somebody or a company who wouldn't be, I'm thinking of close ownership, I'm supposed to be thinking more of ownership, who wouldn't be aligned to our values, our purposes, and it's this idea in scripture of not being unequally yoked. What does that mean in practice? And I'm not sure if we've taken those decisions have been right or wrong, but the consideration is whoever you're entering into a relationship with, are they aligned to your purposes? Is their heart the same? And so, we're part of, I guess we are joint owners of Spar UK, such as it is. It's not for profit. So all whatever revenues are generated go back to the individual wholesalers, but we're working in partnership. I've been on the UK board for quite a few years now. I've only once had another Christian on the board with me, and that is actually a sweeter fellowship. In many ways, I can remember in the middle of a fairly long and tedious board meeting, I had I'd had the opportunity to go to the States, to go to a conference, a couple of people with me, and as we got onto the plane, a lady from our central office and myself, they said to us, you're going left, which usually means you're heading into business class or first class. And we're going, oh, right, okay. And the other guy, he was back down into economy where we had been. And we got a chance on the flight to talk about, she said, I'm interested in doing Alpha. So I encouraged her about Alpha, and then, came back. She went through the course, came to faith. So this other Christian on the board, he was coming up the stairs. The loos were downstairs. I was going down. He was coming up. And I said, by the way, this lady's become a Christian. And the look on his face, how excited he was, in terms of purpose, it was far more important than whatever we were discussing during the board at that time. So, the nature of relationships is important, and alignment. I'm not sure that at all times, I couldn't say that you have to be, from an ownership point of view, you've got to be working with a Christian, but it definitely helps. Having said that, sadly, there are relationships go awry between Christians as well, right. and it's somewhere along the line, purpose and motive gets all tangled up.
I was actually thinking about you during that scene at the Council of Elrond, where the ring's in the middle and everyone starts fighting with each other.
That's the Spar board.
I literally was like, wow. I was like, I bet you that's the boardroom.
Not our boardroom in our business,
right? But even with Stephen and
competing, so you want to have shared goals. Getting your KPIs right, getting being very clear about what it is someone's going to do and deliver. Some relationships are contractual relationships as well.
Right.
The best relationships, you don't need the contract; it's just there. All else, something goes wrong.
Our dear friend Father Luke here, he's got a great thing where he talks about the difference between commitments.
Yes.
Kind of like base layer.
Yeah.
Relationships.
Yeah.
Contractual relationships.
Yeah.
And then covenantal relationships.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting, you didn't realize this, but your answer to Ethan was also like great marriage advice, because I know him and a lot of people in the room, they're thinking about like, who should I marry and what should I look for in my life partner and all this sort of stuff. So your answer actually of being unequally yoked, I think, fitted to that as well.
So I'm intrigued that there's no women in the room. Okay, from a Christian entrepreneurial point of view, but that's another subject, and you're clearly trying to do something with.
Yeah, so this is like
is important
explicitly for Christian men.
Iron sharpening iron, all that.
And it's interesting. Like even in the conversations with Alexander and Stephen, there were moments, even just this month, where it felt like we were around the council table, and we could have fallen out. Like we sensed it so clearly. We were like, this is a moment where the fellowship could get shattered, or this is a moment where we could lean in and we could actually like embrace that brotherhood and actually just invite the Holy Spirit into the moment and be like, look, we sense the seeds of discord and disunity.
Yeah.
God, please protect us in this next part of the conversation as we move into more delicate stuff. And
But in standing
yeah.
against that or compromising or whatever is required, I'll see the bigger picture, God's hand. You can look back. That strengthens relationship, strengthens purpose as well. But just bear in mind that when God made man in His image and gave him a job to do, He gave him a helper. He made woman, and she has complementary strengths. So whether I'm not sure, I've great marriage, love my wife dearly. Whether we could actually work in business together, that's another story. But I have many customers who are a husband and wife team, and they work really well. I think the key thing is you're working with someone who is. And this is about building a team. You're bringing complementary strengths to the table.
Right.
So know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. Look to see what's missing. Find the right people. You're bit by bit. It's like the jigsaw you're trying to put together to get the full picture. Find the right people who are going to add value to what you're doing. God saw the need to do that. Provide a woman and get that complementary fit. Might or might not be your wife. It might be somebody else who's bringing complementary skills to you.
Shout out to Stephen, my business husband. Someone else who hasn't gone? Yeah. Come forth, Costin. Lay forth your case.
Sweet. Yeah, I got a question about so it seems like it's definitely harder to sell in today's market. And so you got to get kind of crafty with your offers. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's kind of this weird line between deceiving versus getting them to buy. We started running for the plumbing business. We do a $200 water heater buyback. So we tell them, we buy your old water heater from you for $200 and then we install a new one, but we just charge them $200 more to install a new one. I don't know if that's I don't know. I feel like that's getting close to the line where it's almost deceitful, but I'm not sure. The amount of work that we'd be able to sell if we didn't do that would be significantly less because we've ran tests and those ads perform just so much better, get so much more leads. And I don't know where the line gets crossed at that point.
And I can't advise you in terms of where that line is. You know your business, and I guess we got to be guided by our conscience. You're aware at least of the desire not to deceive. So the Nazrul were deceived in the earlier
the Black Riders. Yeah, for sure.
So
9 men, 9 kings of men.
But in selling, Selling's clearly important, and you have to, whatever you're selling, you got to understand the needs of your customer, and you got to package it so that they can see clearly the benefits of what you're offering. So we run all sorts of advertising campaigns. Hopefully, none of them are deceitful or cross the line. But when you look at what happens in the grocery trade. What generally people do is they put the prices up for a number of weeks, and then they offer then they come on promotion, and they're at discount. But shoppers are cute as well, so it's all a bit of a game. Because shoppers will look around for value, so they'll know when something might be coming on promotion. They only buy on promotion. So where does the line? I'm not going to sit here and say what it is for you or any other business. Be aware that there is a line that you don't want to deceive, but also that you really have to take your product and make it attractive. But at the end of the day, offer good value, which is what we try to do. Even though we don't have the scale of a Tesco, we want to be able to offer market leading promotions and fair value when something's off promotion.
At our retreat last week, someone taught us a new tool that we've already tried out on the last fellowship call for those guys who were there. And it's just a way to get clear on a decision like that. It's usually more beneficial if you can do it with multiple people rather than just one person. And it's really simple. You set a 5-minute timer and you just ask a very clear green light or red light question from God. And you just ask, is this ad crossing the line? 5-minute timer, you pray, and it's better if you're not alone because then you got it kind of like a council. And usually before the timer even goes off, sometimes before you even close your eyes, you already know. But it's just creating that little bit of space because
I suppose ask yourself, is this actually true?
Right.
But some of the time, different shoppers have different needs. come from different demographics, different family situations, different levels of income, and you've got to try to appeal to a broad mass of people. But if you can, we're increasingly trying to customize and personalize what we do and engage online to do that. So you've got to package things up in a different way. Again, it's understanding the benefits of your product, the needs of the customer, and you're going to package it this way for that set of customers. You're segmenting your customers and package it that way for that set of customers.
Right.
None of it's deceitful. You're just taking the attributes and you're emphasizing what's important to the one set of customers. But don't make any claims that are untrue.
Right. It's interesting. Like while Martin was speaking, I thought of a verse that I've kind of wrestled with my whole life. Something that Jesus said, and he says, "We are to be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves." And you're like, hold on a second. Did the Son of God just tell me to be like a snake? And it's like, what's that all about? And
Snakes have a bad rep.
They got a big bad rep for sure.
But it's that idea of being shrewd. You kind of got to be worldly wise,
right?
But at the same time, take people at face value and trust.
Yeah, I think about, like, we skipped over some of the bits, but like the difference between Saruman the wizard and Gandalf the wizard. It's like Gandalf knows like all the tricks of the trade. Like he's read the Russell Brunson books. He knows the perfect webinar funnel. He understands like the psychology of sales, but he uses them for good rather than evil. And again, how do you decide and distinguish what is good and evil? I think that's the job of the Holy Spirit through our conscience to kind of keep us on that path.
And was he transparent with Frodo in terms of what he Gandalf had faced and what Frodo was going to face? No,
right?
Because he had wisdom to know,
right?
That was not the thing to do.
Yeah, and Stuart said something very interesting in our house on Sunday. He's like, like there are times to hold back cards. Like being truthful and transparent does not mean immediately you show up with all the cards on the table. Absolutely. There's shrewdness there, and you actually use the analogy of playing a game. Wow, interesting that's kind of come back round as well. We all like to play games. James, do you want to bomb up? I'm kind of feeling like 5-10 minutes, something like that, and then we'll transition.
Hi, Martin.
Hi.
Martin, what would you say to the man who is tired and exhausted in balancing everything? So through God's provision, trying to be a provider, trying to show up as being a good husband, trying to show up as being a present dad, trying to serve God in the community, trying to do all these things, stay healthy, so on, and work hard, and are finding it tiring and exhausting. Maybe you've got some experience or something, some wisdom that you can share
Plenty of experience
with the group. And it's something that's come up a lot as well, even just in the time that we've been here. I think there's a lot of people in that position, so appreciate any wisdom that you have.
Okay. Work is hard, and if it's not going well, if you can't see actually how to get through something or how you're going to get through, then that can actually sap your energy. These things happen that are just debilitating, and so you end up worrying, thinking about stuff that at the end of the day might never happen. But I'm fortunate in that generally I can lay aside whatever is going on in work when I come in through the door. When I had young kids, it's easy, they kind of take over your life in some ways. So it's rare that I would lose sleep, but I do lose sleep from time to time, and there's something going on. Often it's a relationship breakdown. You've fallen out with someone and it's not going well. But there is an overwhelming sense of tiredness that you can get when it's just you're towards the end of a long season, or you can't see the end of that season. And for me, you need rest. How do you get rest? I think of Elijah and overcoming the prophets of Baal. So tremendous victory, and then it all been too much, and he collapsed in a heap, and God had to minister to him and look after him. And actually, I hadn't sort of got to that stage, but we go to the same church. I was in church one day. This is a couple of years ago. We were doing a lot of succession planning because we've had a great performing team now for about 20, 25 years, and the guys are all my age and they're all thinking of retirement. We knew we had to replace the team. And the subject of the the sermon that day was Elijah. So Elijah was ministered to. The rest came from the Lord. He got sleep, he got food, and he was told to go and find a successor. And I took that as I took that as confirmation that I needed to go and find a successor.
Wow.
Sometimes it is you just need help. So I think of Moses and all he was trying to sort out all these issues that the Israelites had. Day after day, they were all coming to him with his problems, and his father-in-law were not convinced he wasn't what we described now. He wasn't an Israelite anyway. What was his faith? I don't know. But he could see very clearly that Moses needed to delegate and give him some very practical advice. Sometimes you just need to get away and just get a break. But it is the Lord ultimately who provides the refreshment that's required. I think you can, one, recognize that it's getting too much, because it'll affect so many things. It'll affect your own personal health and well-being and that of your family, etc., and ultimately your business. So how do you deal with it? I try to stop, recognize, find a way to stop working, get a break, talk to someone about it, get some help in. But I'd say if anything, business for me it's because the business is growing, but becoming more complex. It's getting harder. We've recognized the need to get people in, and it takes away from your overall sort of kingdom purpose as well when you're in the weeds. But I think it's the Lord who provides the solution.
Right.
But recognize when you're getting to that point, and try to take steps to get time away, to get a break, to get a different perspective. But I'm amazed at how many times in my life you come in against that brick wall and you can't see a way through, but the Lord does provide a way through. So come to Him. Come unto me, all you who are weak and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My burden is easy, my yoke is light. That sounds glib, but with faith, it is true. My father, I suffer from the same issues. He had a heart attack at the age of 52. He was training for a marathon, and he didn't feel well after it. And he was looked after himself pretty much, but he worked hard. But he just had heart disease and he had a heart attack. I remember sending him the verse, and I think it's at the end of Isaiah 40. Even young men stumble and fall, but those who wait on the Lord will have their strength renewed, like the eagle. So that's what I turn to, and it doesn't come from us; it comes from the Lord.